natural flow of things. This is your main man, Quann Boyd, Michael Q. Boyd, writer, co-creator, whatever you want to call it, First Brigade. I want to talk about the outside forces that work against the First Brigade. The best way I can explain this is to kind of go back to the initial idea of what First Brigade was to be, and that's a superhuman first responders unit. So with that in mind, I was thinking of two different types of stories immediately based on what I had kind of figured out. So it was the woman versus nature type of story. So that can be anything from like fires, having to deal with, nature of some sort of thing, things that are out of a man or woman's control. And then I was also thinking woman versus self stories, and that was more playing off of the idea of things that might be going on internally with whatever particular character may be involved in the story in relationship to whatever may be going on externally for that character. But as I was developing those types of stories, I realized that I saw a really good opportunity to add woman versus woman or man versus man, however you want to put it, types of stories also within this one and done concept for First Brigade. That whole one and done really played to the idea of, okay, one issue can be a woman versus nature story, and one issue could be a woman versus self story. And then it was like, well, if I have those two type of stories, structures to play with, I might as well think about woman versus woman. So for me, that meant, okay, what's the one thing I love in superhero comic books? It's the villains. I love villains. I heart villains. I grew up liking bad guys. I mean, and anything that I was into, be it cartoons, comic books, professional wrestling, I was a fan of the villain. I'm just a big proponent of villains. It's not to say like in real life, I don't want to get involved in any villainy, I try to keep my life pretty simple and plain, but in a fictional realm, and especially within the realm of superhero comics, I believe that they are necessary. I can sympathize or empathize with the antagonist. Like, take for instance, Generation 1 Transformers. Yeah, Megatron was that man, but empathize and understand the manipulative nature of somebody like Starscream and his thirst for power and pretty much wanting to be recognized. And hey, let's even extend outside of comic books. I'm a huge wrestling fan. If you look at the intro, you see me rocking the little, Adam Cole t-shirt. So in the 80s and 90s, for me, that was like, it was just as important a part of my life creatively as comic books and hip hop. Two of my favorite wrestlers, both Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, were basically bad guys, or in wrestling terminology, they were known as heels. To me, that's when those characters were at their pinnacle. It was like, yeah, they were great as, good guys and were the fans cheated, but when the fans were booing them, oh my God, they were at their best. Yeah, so a lot of times in fiction, what you'll find is, especially in stories where there's a protagonist and an antagonist, the antagonist normally has the agency, meaning they're the ones with the plan, they're the one that you're kind of following along, even if it's from the perspective of the protagonist, but you're following the antagonist along as they either see this plan through or this plan fails. So I've always loved that dynamic when it came to, protagonist versus antagonist type relationship or man versus man type of storytelling. So yeah, I like the bad guys. I said it. I do. They're fun characters. The dynamic, the things that they can do and get away with in a fictional story. A great villain pretty much props up any hero. But I'll be honest, the stories or the characters that I kind of stuck with the most had the better rogues galleries. I can put it in any particular order. Spider-Man, Batman, Flash have arguably some of the best rogues galleries, period. And that's kind of how one layer of me thinking, okay, how do I put up a good team of rivals? How do I create my own rogues gallery? Basically, yeah, I'm pretty much trying to create something that I feel confident enough in terms of a rogues gallery that I would say my rogues stand up to my characters the same way that Batman's rogue stands up to against him, Spider-Man, the Flash, you know. So for me, it was trying to make sure I hit on a lot of different aspects of the characters individually and collectively as a group. So be it villains that may have a personal connection with one of the heroes, be it relations through interpersonal work, past relations, things of that nature, to also kind of having characters that, in terms of powers, just outclass the team. Where it's like, okay, and an impending battle, how do they outthink to outdo them? And the third piece of the puzzle with a lot of these villains was thinking about the psychological aspect, how they may have some type of psychological advantage over members of the team for whatever reason, whether it's how they exude their personality out to the world, or maybe it's some diabolical mental manipulation they may have going on. But with that being said, just kind of thinking about all the different superhero stories, be it team books or a solo series with remarkable rosters of bad guys, you know, villains, I was like, I got a chance to just kind of roll up my sleeves and really like, okay, who or what needs to oppose this team? I always kind of just like, I've like the bad guys, just like, yeah, I know they're gonna lose. They're supposed to lose. Well, in most cases, you want them to lose, but if they're dynamic and they're a layered character, they can add as much to the story and sometimes more than the protagonist or the hero of the story. So that pretty much is a long-winded way of me saying that I was amped up to create some antagonists for the group.